The year was 1879, and the land around Red Mesa stretched wide and quiet, like a great brown sea that never ended. The sun rose early and left late, and the wind carried dust in thin lines across the ground. In a small homestead just outside town, Nora Pike lived with her daughter June. Nora was careful with every action, every look, every promise. Life in this place had taught her to depend on herself. Friends in the past had said fine words and then disappeared when help was needed most. Nora had learned to trust her own hands, her own plans, and the small circle of safety she could build for June. Nora's homestead was simple, but it was orderly and strong. The fence posts were straight. The shutters latched well. The floorboards were clean. She kept jars lined up, beans, flour, sugar. She kept water barrels near the door. Everything had a place. Everything had a reason. When the wind started to push around the house, Nora would step outside, watch the sky, and count the heartbeats between each gust. She always listened to the land, because the land spoke in signs, soft at first, then stronger if you ignored it. June was 8 years old and bright like morning. She had a way of seeing beauty in small things. A shiny stone, a feather stuck in a fence, a line of ants carrying crumbs. She liked to run, to sing to the hens, to name the shapes of clouds. Nora loved June's soft humming, the sway of her braids when she skipped, the trust in her eyes. All of Nora's work had one purpose: to keep June safe and growing. Even when Nora seemed cold to others, she kept a warm room for June to be a child, to learn, to laugh. Near the edge of town, a quiet drifter named Caleb McRae had set up a small camp. He was tall and lean, with calm hands that knew how to mend leather, fix a loose board, or settle a nervous horse. He did not talk much. He would tip his hat, do the job, take his pay, and move along. Some in town liked him, others were not sure. They said he had been a scout once and had seen many hard miles. Still, he did not boast. He was polite but distant, like a man standing at a doorway who was not sure he was welcome to step in. Nora noticed him the way she noticed a far cloud. She logged it and kept on with her work. She saw how he checked his gear with care and how his rope was always coiled neat. She saw that he watched the horizon the way she did. But she did not invite talk. She had learned that kindness in this place could be used like a tool by those who did not plan to return it. Better to keep her space, keep her rules, keep her child close. In that season, the weather turned strange. Mornings began sweet and clear, but by noon the air felt heavy, and by late day a haze hung low like a veil. The dust did not just blow. It lifted and hovered as if thinking about something. Birds flew closer to the ground. Cattle bunched together for no clear reason. Nora watched it all and said little. She wiped grit from the windowsills and made sure the door latch swung true. She told June, "If the wind comes fast, you hold my hand." No wondering, June nodded. June always nodded. But she was 8 years old and the world was wide with bright edges. She did not know how thin safety could be when the wind decided to test it. On the morning the storm gathered, the sky carried a chalky look. Red Mesa wore a pale ring, as if a painter had brushed dust around its shoulders. Nora stepped out and tilted her head. The air felt like cloth stretched tight. She could not see the storm yet, but she felt it. She set June to small tasks. Bring in the wash. Set the pail by the door. Keep your scarf near. Her voice was firm but not sharp. She did not want June to worry, only to be ready. In town, a few folks began to talk about the drift. Some covered their windows with extra cloth. A storekeeper tied down a sign so it would not swing. From his camp, Caleb saw the same signs Nora saw. He wet a kerchief from his water skin and checked the knot on his saddle rope. He looked toward Nora's homestead. He had seen the little girl chase a butterfly along the fence line not long ago. The memory sat in his mind like a small lantern. By noon, the wind picked up. It came in slow pulls, then in steady breath. Dust lifted in curling threads. The hens clucked and stayed near the coop. June helped bring kindling inside and set a bucket of water near the stove, the way Nora taught her. She did the work with care, proud to be useful. Nora checked the shutters one more time and looked to the line of fence posts that ran past the corral. She counted them, the way she always did when she needed to think. Then the wind made a sound like a swarm far off. The sound was soft, but it moved in a straight line like a train of bees. The edge of the sky turned the color of old brass. Inside, Nora said. Now, June. June nodded and reached for the door, but a small goat bleated near the corner of the house. It had slipped the little gate and now stood with its rope tangled. June loved that goat. She could not bear to think of it alone in the dust. The wind tugged. The goat tugged. June took 3 quick steps to help. Nora turned to pull the last shutter tight, and in that blink, June stepped out of her mother's reach. The air grew thicker. The sound grew louder. Nora looked and saw June at the corner, thin rope in her hands, trying to free the goat. "June, here now," Nora called, calm but strong. The wind took her voice and stretched it thin. June looked up, saw her mother, and started back. But the first edge of the storm arrived, and with it came a wall of sand that moved like fog made of grit. Everything changed in one breath. The air lost its shape. The yard blurred into soft brown. The fence posts faded into smudges. Nora grabbed a cloth and held it to her mouth by habit, while her other hand reached for June. But June's small shape had already melted into the moving dust. The goat bleated again, and then even that sound was wrapped in the wind. Nora stepped forward, slow and sure. Panic would only waste the little breath the air still gave. She told herself the same steady words she always used. 1 step. 1 reach. Listen. She tried to fix the shape of the yard in her head. The barrel by the door, the corral post, the bend in the fence, so that her feet could follow a map even when her eyes could not. She called June's name again as evenly as she could. "June, answer me. I am coming." The dust pressed against her like a heavy curtain. It stung her cheeks and filled the folds of her dress. She kept one hand on the wall as she edged toward the corner. "June," she said, slower now, saving her voice. The wind gave back only a small scattered sound. At the far side of town, Caleb heard the storm before he saw it. He felt the wind push along the ground and saw a thin stick of dust lift and bend. He pulled his hat tight, soaked his kerchief, and tied one end of his rope to the strongest post he had. He coiled the rest around his arm. He looked up, and the world ahead had turned the color of dry earth. He did not stop to guess who might need him. He walked into the wind the way a swimmer moves into a wave, one careful step, then another. Back at the homestead, Nora reached the corner of the house and felt for the little gate. She found it by touch alone, and the rope there was still warm from June's hands. She ran her fingers along it and found that it led toward the fallen fence near the corral. The wind made a deeper sound now, like a drum held far away. Nora closed her eyes, which did not help much but made the world simpler. She held the gate with one hand and the rope with the other and moved forward. "June," she called, and this time she heard the faintest sound, like a whisper inside a whisper. June had done what Nora had taught her to do. When you cannot see, you crouch low, you hold on to something steady, you make yourself small and wait. She had slid behind a piece of fencing that had tipped in the wind. She pressed her face into her sleeve and thought of her mother's hands, the way they felt when they braided her hair. Firm, safe, sure. She wanted to be brave, and she was. The wind was not angry. It was simply large and thoughtless, moving everything it could pick up. It pushed pebbles along the ground and carried small sticks into the air, then set them down in new places. It wrapped the world in a soft moving fog. In that fog, sound did not travel well. Still, June's small answer found its way to Nora's ear like a needle through cloth. "I hear you," Nora said, breathing slow so the dust would not make her cough. Each word was a careful gift she did not want to waste. "Keep talking to me, June. Keep your face covered. I am close." Caleb reached the fence line near Nora's land and found the rope she had left by the gate many days before for chores. He ran his hand along it, then tied his own rope to it, making a longer line that could guide him back. He did this without thinking much about it, the way a person ties a boot on a cold morning. He had learned these motions in other storms, in other quiet places where the ground was wide and the sky liked to test those who lived under it. He heard a small, thin call carried across the wind, and he knew it was a child's call. He moved toward it, staying low, feeling his way forward with slow, sure touches, post, rope, corner, board. The dust still moved outside like a soft river, but inside the small house the air was warm and calm. Nora wrapped June in a fresh blanket and gave her a cup of water. The girl took slow sips and watched the quiet man who had helped them. He stood near the door with the rope in neat coils at his feet. His coat was heavy with sand and his eyes were tired, but they were kind. He nodded to June with a small smile that said more than words. Then he put a hand to his chest and took a careful breath. The storm had taken a toll. Nora saw this at once. She was not a doctor, but she knew when someone's breath came short. She moved to the stove and heated water. She found a clean cloth and crushed a small pinch of herbs she kept for coughs. June helped by holding the cup steady. The man did not ask for anything, but he accepted what was offered with quiet thanks. He sat on the low stool, resting his back against the wall, and closed his eyes for a moment as the warm steam reached him. He breathed it in slowly, and his chest relaxed a little at a time. June watched him closely. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft, as if loud sound might break the calm that had settled in the room. "I will be," he said. "You were brave out there. You stayed put. That helped more than you know." June pulled the blanket tighter and gave a tiny, proud nod. Nora touched her daughter's hair and looked at the man over June's head. "Thank you," she said. She chose her words with care as if they were precious seeds. "You brought her back to me." The man met Nora's eyes and gave a small shake of his head. "You kept her safe until I found you. We did it together." His voice was gentle and there was no show in it. He did not try to make himself large. He let the truth be plain and simple. The wind pressed once more at the door like a guest asking to come in. Then it shifted away. The sound grew softer. The storm would pass soon. Nora placed a kettle on the stove and set a pan of cornbread to warm. The small house took on a welcoming scent, clean steam, a hint of herbs, and the sweet, mild smell of corn. June began to hum under her breath, a little tune she often used when she felt safe. Nora felt something loosen in her chest, a feeling she did not have words for yet. She had guarded her home and her heart for so long that it was strange to let the wall down. Even for a moment, she watched the man breathe in the steam again, and she thought about the way he had tied his rope, the way he had kept the line steady, the way he had waited at the door without stepping in until he knew it was welcome. There was care in each of these small choices. Care and respect. After a time, the man tried to stand, but his legs shook a little. Nora moved nearer at once. "Please sit a while longer," she said. "The ground is still unkind out there." She poured tea for all three of them and set the cups on the table. June took her cup with both hands, careful not to spill. The man glanced toward the window, where the dust had thinned to a pale veil. He gave in to rest just for a bit. They ate in quiet. The cornbread was warm and the tea soothed the throat. When the meal was done, June set the cups in a neat row on the shelf. Nora brought out a small tin of salve for the tiny cuts the dust had made on the man's hands. She did not ask. She simply opened the tin and set it near him. He used it without fuss, rubbing the salve into each finger, as if he understood that care could be found in simple actions, not just grand ones. When the storm finally eased, the light changed in the room. It grew clearer as if a curtain had lifted. The man stood and tested his breath. It came easier now. He reached for his hat and held it against his chest. "I should check on the horses in town," he said. "They do not like this kind of wind." Nora walked him to the door. She did not want him to go, but she understood that everyone had someone or something to look after. "What is your name?" she asked. "Caleb," he said. "Caleb McRae. I am Nora," she replied. "And this is June." Caleb tipped his hat to mother and child. "You both did well, Nora. You kept calm. That saved a lot of trouble." Nora felt a small lift in her heart at the word well. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken it to her in that plain, kind way. She opened the door and Caleb stepped into the softer light of the afternoon. The dust drifted low now, like a tired thought. He coiled the rope one last time, clipped it to his saddle, and walked with steady steps toward town. That night, the town settled into the quiet that always follows a storm. People swept porches, shook out blankets, and checked for any small damage the wind had done. Stories began to travel as stories do, about the sudden dark, the roar like soft thunder, the way the sky had turned the color of old coins. In those stories, one name came up more than once: Caleb, the quiet man with the steady rope. He had guided a little girl and her mother to safety. He had helped an older neighbor latch her window. He had fetched a barrel lid from the street and returned it to the store. He had moved from place to place like a calm hand smoothing a wrinkled sheet. The next morning, Nora stood on her porch and watched the world return to itself. The hens pecked. The goat chewed. The sky was clear and wide as if nothing had ever gone wrong. June ran a short line between the door and the coop, so the animals could be let in quickly if the wind rose again. It was a small change, but a smart one. She did it with pride. Later, Nora and June walked into town with a basket of fresh bread. They wanted to share a little of their good fortune. The main street looked brighter than usual. People were out with brooms and buckets, laughing in that soft, grateful way that follows a scare. Someone had hung a small brass bell from a thick beam outside the store. A hand-painted sign beside it read, "Storm Watch, ring 2 long, 1 short." Nora paused, surprised. The pattern was the same as the rescue signal pulled along the rope. She looked around and saw Caleb near the livery, adjusting a leather strap. She walked over with June, the basket warm on her arm. "We brought bread," Nora said. "If anyone needs a bite, many will," Caleb answered. "And that bell will help next time." Folks wanted something simple that everyone could learn quickly. "Did you think of it?" June asked, eyes bright. "A group of us did," he said. "I only shared what I knew about signals you can use when sound does not travel well." He looked to the bell and back. 2 long, 1 short will call people to string lines between buildings. A wet cloth bin will be set under the bell. Ropes can be clipped at the corners. We will test it once a month so it becomes natural. Nora felt that warm lift again. She watched as a few townspeople tied short lengths of rope from post to post, not to trap anyone, but to guide. She saw a barrel filled with clean cloths ready to soak and use for breathing. She saw little cards tacked inside doorways with simple steps. Stay low. Hold a line, move slow. Count your steps. It was a plan. It was thought turned into care. It did not depend on one strong person. It depended on many steady hands. June handed the basket to Caleb. "For you first," she said. "Because you helped us." Caleb shook his head once and smiled. "Take one for yourselves. Then let us set the rest by the bell. Anyone who passes can take what they need." Nora took a small loaf and placed it back in June's hands. Together they set the basket on a crate by the bell. People came and went, taking a piece of bread, leaving a word of thanks, sharing a small, helpful tip. I keep a scarf by my door now. I moved my water barrel closer. I taught my youngest to count fence posts. These were not grand statements, but they were true and they were useful. Over the next days, Nora noticed changes in herself that surprised her. She found herself waving to a neighbor instead of looking away. She stopped to help a woman pick up apples that had rolled from a spilled crate. She left a small jar of salve at the store with a note. Free for eyes and hands after dust. It was not that she had suddenly become someone else. It was that she had felt the pull of a steady rope and learned that trust could be built, not just given away. It could be built with small acts like cups of tea and neat coils of rope and signs on a bell. Caleb, for his part, did not become loud-o.